Good morning, everybody. We've got a mixed trade in the grain markets here early on Friday morning. It is 6:30 a.m. Central Time. March corn futures down a half cent at 5.90 3/4. March soybeans up 2 3/4 at 12.81. March Chicago wheat up 1 3/4 at 7.72 1/2. March Kansas City wheat up 6 at 8.09 3/4. March spring wheat is down 3/4 of a cent at 10.26. If you're listening on the podcast, guys, leave me a rating or review. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Help me to grow this channel. Hit the like button. Leave me a comment if you have any opinion on anything that I say here. If you need some additional assistance from me, go to my website. It is www.standardgrain.com. Click on Grain Marketing Plan in the upper right-hand corner. $49.99 a month. A ton of information direct from me. Morning email every business day. Text message service. Subscriber-only videos. All of my grain marketing recommendations. I essentially advise customers on when to sell corn, soybeans, and wheat, broken down by crop year, by percentage. It's tracked every single day. This is a monthly deal. Cancel it at any time, guys. No other fee, no other obligation. I will not try to sell you anything else. Some groups are reducing their estimates for the Brazilian corn and soybean crops. Private group Ag Rural, who's very well followed, reduced its estimate for the Brazilian soybean crop to 144.7 million metric tons from 145.4 previously. USDA is at 144. The group cut its estimate for the country's corn crop down to 114.4 from 115.5 previously. These are still very big crops, and both of those new numbers would represent record crops for both soybeans and corn in Brazil. The group is citing, of course, and we've talked about this a lot here the last couple of weeks, drier conditions in the country's southern states as the cause for the reduced estimates. Of course, again, even with those reduced estimates, those are still huge crops. But the question here moving forward, I guess, is this: do these crop estimates continue to move lower as a result of this dryness in South Brazil? And that's a big question mark. I would probably go out on a limb at this point and say that the stuff further north is far enough along that they're probably still going to have a record crop, but to what extent, I'm really not too sure. It should be noted also that another well-followed group, IHS Markit, they left their estimates for both crops unchanged. Now, in regard to weather and conditions, South Brazil and Argentina are going to be pretty dry here really through the end of the year. Not a ton in the forecast in terms of rainfall expected. Now, you look at these areas of central Brazil and a little bit north, and they're going to see a lot of rain, and that's generally been the trend. These central areas are wet, and the southern areas of Brazil here and into Argentina are dry, so not much relief in the forecast. The temperatures are also going to be well above normal, essentially in these same areas here over the next week or so. So you do have certainly some ongoing issues there, and the issues don't appear to be going away, at least between now and the end of the year. Export sales of corn and wheat were excellent last week. Net corn sales 1.949 million metric tons. That's a marketing year high. That was up 72% on the week, up 74% from the prior 4-week average. Mexico, the featured buyer of corn, accumulated corn sales for the marketing year running about 7% behind last year's pace. We're about where we need to be there. There is some concern regarding shipments of corn to China in particular. China has big commitments on the books, yet we haven't shipped a whole lot of it, so that's something to pay attention to. Net sales of wheat, also a marketing year high, 651,000. Mexico, Japan, Peru, all featured wheat buyers. Accumulated wheat sales for the marketing year are 23% behind last year's pace. Soybean sales were soft last week. Corn and wheat good. Soybeans not so much. 1.3 million. That was toward the lower end of expectations. China was the featured buyer of beans, accounting for about 75% of the weekly total. Accumulated soybean sales for the marketing year down 25% versus the same period last year. You've got a lot of issues here, and I talk about this all the time. You've got a shorter export window both on the front end and the back end. On the front end, because of those hurricane-related delays at the U.S. Gulf. On the back end, I believe because Brazilian harvest is going to be early. So there's a lot of people, and myself included, I think that USDA projection for soybean exports could be a little bit high, but we'll see what happens. There's still some time to play catch-up, I suppose. Goldman Sachs says that oil demand will see record levels in 2022 and 2023. This is a quote from their head of energy research. You've already had record high demand before this latest variant, and you're adding higher jet demand, and the global economy is still growing. He went on to say, you'll see how we will average a new record high in demand in 2022 and again in 2023. He mentioned electric vehicles and said this: you're selling nearly 6 million electric vehicles a year now. That is still less than 100,000 barrels per day of demand destruction on a 100 million barrel per day market, so it's still a small piece. This is of importance to us, of course, because The more oil we use, generally, the more ethanol we're going to use. This is perhaps a positive for biodiesel. And, this could always change. These new variants are going to come around every few weeks now, the way that it looks. Do we become immune to that, or is this something that's going to continually disrupt demand? We really don't know that. President Biden's Build Back Better plan is going to be delayed in all likelihood until January at the very least. This is, of course, a $2 trillion or more than $2 trillion climate social spending bill. It's also going to include things that will alter the tax code. This thing didn't have any problem getting through the House, and people were very optimistic about it about a month ago. But now there is some belief that this thing will face significant problems in the Senate. There was, of course, a meeting between Biden and a key holdout, Joe Manchin from West Virginia, and that went very poorly, according to reports. The big implication here, I think, if you're in agriculture or for anybody, is that we don't really know what the tax code is going to look like for next year, and it would be nice to know that. Also, some of this climate stuff is up in the air. Just a lot of things that even just within the Democratic Party, they don't need Republican support for this, and it has no Republican support. But the progressives and the more moderates can't agree on a lot of this stuff. So I guess you'll see this thing resolved in January, perhaps. We'll see. The cattle market yesterday finished the day kind of mixed in the live cattle futures. Feeder cattle were also mixed to lower across the board. Cash cattle has been light this week, as low as 136, as high as 140. Kansas has been like 138, so maybe off just a little bit from where we were last week. The box beef market was up a little bit yesterday. And the outside markets, the S&P is down 20 points out of the cash open. The Dow Jones is down 80. We had a little bit of a downside reversal in the stock market yesterday. Bonds up a little bit. Precious metals up a little bit. Crude oil is down $1.38 at 70.76 in the February WTI contract. Have a great weekend, guys. I'll talk to you Monday morning.